the Shia this Tuesday night Shia takes place after Shabbos Bereshit, because Shabbos Bereshit, which was last Shabbos, is often a day or 2 days after Simchas Torah. And so very often, like this week, we're already in Parshas NOACH. And the problem with that is that year after year we keep doing sikhas or maimorim, which are based on Parshas NOACH, and Bereshit gets neglected. Yeah. And the problem with that is that there is probably no deeper Kabbalah, no deeper secrets of Torah than those contained in the first part of Bereshit, and not only the first, but even the first words. The first words are just libraries have been written about. I mean, people, it's extraordinary. This is not part of the shir that I prepared, but I just give you an example. The word Bereshit has exactly 6 letters and 1 plus for Shabbos. I mean, the levels of accuracy and depth in these psukim, all of which is hidden, is just mind-bending. And the Ramban, as Tony and I were learning this morning, the Ramban has as a comment that there is the deepest parts of Kabbalah in the first in the first parts of Parshas Bereshit.
Same Rashi.
And so yes, so it's criminal in a way that in the shir we miss out on Bereshit so often. So I thought this year, okay, it is Parshas NOACH, but there's plenty of shirim on Parshas NOACH having been recorded already. So I thought we'd ignore the fact that ignore the fact that it's Parshas NOACH and learn something about Parshas Bereshit. Now, in Parshas Bereshit, in Parshas Bereshit, there are some of the deepest personal life lessons that exist. And the first, I'll give you an example of some of the things. The people who learn Torah, wisdom of Hashem, and Am Yisrael high only because of the fact that we have stuck to the Torah. That's the only reason we've outlived all our host nations and all our enemies. We are a ridiculous minority. We have a ridiculous amount of soil on the planet named Israel, and yet the whole of the world's concerned with us and concerned with this tiny little bit of land. And if you want to know, and there've been meetings and speeches about Jewish continuity and why we have Jewish continuity, and it's very simple. We have Jewish continuity because we are connected to the Torah, and so long as we're connected to the Torah, we have a miraculous existence. Now, in that connection to Torah, in this week's Sedra, it opens the book of your and my life, and there are some questions. What's the purpose of creation? Why? What does God need it for? There's this whole thing of Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es. Why? What is it? Why did he need to create the world? That's one question. Another question is, we have a massive problem that everybody has to understand is a massive problem, and everybody has to understand that it isn't a massive problem, and that is evil. We believe in God, we believe in Hashgacha Pratis, we believe in divine providence, we believe that Hashem is bringing the world into existence every moment. That means that Hashem is controlling everything in Gashmias, That means that you can't take his name off evil. And how is it possible that Hashem, who's all good, can not only tolerate evil, but bring it into existence? I mean, that's a subject that any thinking Jew needs to spend a great deal of his life thinking about, because it's a very serious question. I'll give you another example. Free choice. We're supposed to, if you don't allow logically that we have free choice, then you can't allow logically the concept of reward and punishment. And if you don't allow the concept of reward and punishment, we've got a jungle. We don't have and that's not how we learn. We don't learn that we have a jungle. We learn that we have a garden. Bossi Lagani means I come into my garden. So the world is a garden, not a jungle. So these are big questions. Now, and it starts, the whole of BERESHIT starts with the most extraordinary question. It says that the world was created by a Soros Mamoris, 10 sayings. It's really, when you count it, you'll count 9, but the reason it's 10 is because BERESHIT is one of those 10 sayings, the word BERESHIT. But let's go to the 9. The first of those 9 is Hashem saying that the first thing he did was create light. Right? Vayehi Oya. Oya means light. And there are some massive kindergarten logic problems here. Let's start with the first one. Where's light come from? The sun and the moon, correct? Stars. Sun and the moon and the stars weren't created until the third day. On the first day, when Hashem says, let there be light, what light are we talking about? So the Zohar and Hasidus teach that light is not Gashmius light, it's not physical light that comes from the sun and the moon. It's a different form of light. Now, let's just before we even get to that, let's talk about the simple physics of light. I don't know how many of you remember your schoolboy physics. Light is a very confusing subject because the scientists still don't know whether light is a particle or whether it's an energy. It defies scientific
logic.
Explanation. It even defies, to some extent, description, except that some of light's properties are understood. We understand that light travels at a given speed, 186,000 miles a second, and we understand that once light is traveling, it never stops. So it can come to, for example, if we see a star that burns up, and we have physical evidence of that recorded through a telescope, that may have burned up 800 years ago. But the speed of light takes that long to get to us, that it takes us that long to see it. But don't think that the light stops when it comes to us. The light keeps going. Where does it keep going to? So these are all very difficult physical problems, and yet they're nothing compared to the spiritual problem of light, because we don't, at least with the physical problems, we know we're talking about light that's coming from the sun and the moon and the stars, but when we're talking about this light, this is a light which comes before any creation of light, other than this, Vayehi Oya, let there be light. And not only that, but the next phrase is, and that Hashem saw that that he made the light, and the light was good. Toiv, we were talking about this morning. So the word toiv, good, is code, and light is code. And the secrets that come with that are actually gateways to understanding life in general and your and my life in particular. And you have to understand that this is heavy duty stuff, because otherwise, why would Hashem bother with it? The whole mechanism is a mechanism which, I mean, let's just lower the voltage for a moment. Make it less incredible. Make it very ordinary. You take a human body, and a human body is made up of billions of cells, DNA and cells, and it has its own regime. You digest automatically, your blood supply pumps automatically, your blood cleans itself with the oxygen you breathe in automatically, you breathe automatically, you walk automatically, your hair grows automatically. This whole world of physicality you inhabit, but how often do you think about what you're controlling? What are you controlling in your body? What am I controlling? Your toenails are going to keep growing. Do you ever think to yourself, I think I'll grow my toenail today?
No, it's automatic.
It's automatic. And go into the garden. The trees that breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen and grow, and they do it all automatically. The bees that fly around are all automatic. The ants that are in your house and such a nuisance in your kitchen when you get them, they have a whole reality. They have a whole kingdom. They have a whole set of duties. They live in civilized societies. They don't know anything about human beings, and you and I don't know anything about ants. I'll tell you one thing, I personally have discovered, for what it's worth, I believe it, but that doesn't mean that you have to, but I reckon that ants have got some sort of telepathic system. You know why? Because I found, I welcome you to my housekeeping, but I found that if you have a trail of ants, instead of going to Woolworths and buying stuff, what you do is you take your finger and you kill 20, 30, 40 in a row, and they all run away, and they don't come back. And they don't come back. How do they know to run away? How does the ant that's over there know to run away from this ant that you're killing over here? There must be some level of communication. Are we party to that level of communication? We're not. But the reality, and all of this is going on, all this gushmis is going on, it's all controlled by Hashem. We learn that as a matter of Kabbalah and as a matter of Chassidus. We think it's automatic. We take it all for granted. We don't give it a second thought. What we think we control, the silliest things. We think we control how much money we have, blind Freddie can understand that. You don't even control the day you're born. What about that? You don't control when you were born, where you were born, who you're going to meet, who your parents are.
How are you going to be born?
How you're going to be born? None of this. So, and then you and I spend 60, 70, 120 years in your body, which is working away automatically. You never stop to think about that. I mean, we get up in the morning and we say a list of brachas, and I want to tell you, I've been saying them for 60 odd years, 55 years, and I'm ashamed to admit, like I think most people would admit, that, I get up in the morning and I put the tea on and I go into, and I say the brachas. I know them all off by heart anyway. I try to read them as much as possible. Every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 2 weeks, I think today I'm going to really concentrate on them, and I concentrate maybe on the first page, and then you start thinking about the car and and we're oblivious to this.
Yeah.
So one of the things that where this sick, and this sick, by the way, I promised I would say where they are from. This is from the Kutei Sikh's volume Yud, It's the second sikha on BERESHIT on page 7. So it's fair to say that if you're going to be born and live your 60, 70, 120 years, not even questioning all the automatic running of you and the world around you, you live a life of a dumbed down life. You live a life where the only real reason you're alive is for your gratification. So you have a good day, it's a measure of your gratification. You have a bad day, it's a measure of your lack of gratification. And that's your life. And then all of a sudden you think that now you have to be lucky because what's happening to you is not controllable by you. Although you think some of it is, but in reality, what you're a passenger in your life. You're a passenger for 60, 70, 120 years without questioning or tuning into what your purpose of existence is. And it's tragically sad that for most people, they miss the whole point of existence. They live their 60, 70, 120 years, and they try and gratify themselves as much as possible. Their measure of success is the extent to which they've gratified themselves. They have no idea why they were born. They have no idea how long they're going to live, and they have no idea when they do finally die, whether they've achieved anything or not. And that is most of humanity. Now, you should know that for a Jew, that's just not good enough. And most Jews don't even understand that they feel that it's not good enough. All they feel is a spiritual emptiness. And they try and fill that with a whole lot of things, with their children and their grandchildren. They're beautiful things. And they have Friday night, the grandchildren come around and they make too much noise, or they don't, and they play games at the table, or they don't, whatever it is that you do. And you have nachas from that, and you have joy and pleasure from that. But you don't think, what am I doing? What are these grandchildren? Are these grandchildren going to be, are their grandchildren going to be Jews? And if they are, what's their life mission? No idea. Why not? Because the parents don't have any idea. And this isn't a criticism, it's a rachmanis. It's a terrible rachmanis. And that's what Chabad is about. Chabad is about people being sent out by the Rebbe as soldiers to get another Jew and peru. We have one of the first mitzvahs that we have in the Torah is to be fruitful and multiply. What does that mean? Explains the Rebbe. Obviously, there's a Gashmias level to that. You're obliged to get married and have children. And there are halachas of how many children you have to have, assuming, of course, you can. And there are some people that never fulfill. The Rebbe was fond of saying to people, I don't keep 613 mitzvahs. The Rebbe said that often. Which one didn't he keep? Children. He didn't have the mitzvah of children. Doesn't mean he didn't want it, but he didn't have it. Huh?
But he was given a warning.
Okay, that you are right. It's not for now. You are right. He was given a warning, but you have to understand that if he went ahead after that warning, this is Rebbe's levels. We don't understand these levels. However, going back to what we're talking about, the purpose of existence escapes most people, and it's tragic that that's the case, because how can you tune into your life purpose if you have no idea what it is?
Yeah.
So the first statement by God in BERESHIT is that there should be light, and there was light. And the question is, what is this light? And what's explained in Kabbalah and Hasidus is that, what to come first? Let me tell you this first. The word oya or should I? No, let's get to this a different way. So the first creation is this light. What is this light? So the Rebbe takes, in this sikha, the Rebbe takes a detour, and he says what we're talking about this morning with the cake.
Yep.
That he says that we have a statement in Torah that soif ma'aser makshava tehila. That means that the end thing is the first thought.
Okay.
So if you want to make a cake, this is the mashal I was taught 100 years ago. You want to make a cake, a chocolate cake. You're imagining the chocolate cake with a cherry on the top, and it's round and it's shiny with chocolate icing, and you imagine that. Now, that is the final product. It's the first thought. Then you go out and you buy the ingredients and you learn how to cook and you make whatever you do to make a cake. I can't cook. But you make a chocolate cake and you make the icing and you put the cherry on the top, and then it's finished, right? But what was the first part? And when it's finished ready to eat. But the first part of that was your thought of the finished product. So the Rebbe explains that this light that we're talking about is that first thought, the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is to bring light. Now, this is embedded in a whole lot of other descriptions. There's another puzzling thing. There's a Rashi that explains that Hashem took that light and he concealed it and hid it for tzaddikim in future generations. What does that mean? What is the point of making light? To hide it. And what is light? Light is a giloi, it's a revelation, right? So if it's a giloi, if it's a revelation, what's the hiding? It sounds like an absolute self-contradiction. Either giloi means a revelation, or helem, which is the word from which the world comes from, and Hashem, bear in mind, BERESHIT, Hashem's beginning to create the world. So what is the world? The world is helem, it is hidden. So the light is being created for what we don't understand, and it's being hidden why we don't understand. And you've got to understand that, because that's the reason you and I are alive. And if you don't understand that, you're never going to tune in to why you're alive. So the Rebbe explains, we have to go step by step. The Torah is a manual for life. Torah is not a history book. Time, what comes first, what comes second, is irrelevant in Torah. It's got nothing to do with the history. So the fact that this light was created before the physical manifestations of life, you can't learn anything out of that, because it's not a history book. What is Torah? It's a manual for your and my happiness. But we just said that most people spend most of their lives seeking gratification, and if they get it, they think they're living well, and if they don't get it, they don't think they're living well. And now we're saying that the Torah is a manual for how to live and how to be happy and how to. So that needs explanation, and it's one of the steps in what we're talking about. So I'll deal with it quickly. It is this, that there are two things you can serve in your life. Two things that you can work for. You can work for yourself gratifying yourself, seizing opportunities. And this is nefesh habahamis, it's natural. Nobody should feel guilty about it. Nobody should think it's a problem. But you can spend your life serving yourself and your extensions. So that means your wife, it means your children, it means your grandchildren. It's a perfectly logical and legitimate way to live, and that's how most people live. But then there's a second way you can live. You can serve your God. You can understand that all this stuff that we were talking about, your body working automatically and the environment working automatically, and they're all manifestations of godliness. And if you've got any sense, you're going to understand that it's smarter to serve the one that creates all this incredible cacophony of miracles around you every minute than to serve your own body. It's a no-brainer. And if you spend your life serving your God, the byproduct of that is that you're happy. Now, so all these people on the planet who are serving themselves, that is at one level clipper. That is at one level darkness. The real game is to focus your life on serving your God. That doesn't mean you can't like your Jaguar or your fillet steak for dinner. Obviously, physical pleasure is made by Hashem as well. So when you're accessing that, I'm not suggesting anybody feels guilty about it, but one has to understand that it's the consolation prize. You know, it says that when Columbus discovered America, they bought New York from the Indians for beads, right? And there's a saying, you traded in land for beads. What does that mean? It means that you're satisfied with a second-rate consolation prize. And even if you're lucky enough to have a life where you spend that life chasing gratification, and the gratification is realized, which it isn't for most people most of the time, but let's say it is. Let's say you're lucky, you're beautiful, you're healthy, you're rich, and you have nakas from your children. Great, fantastic. But still, it doesn't compare to the tzaddik who sits and sees godliness in his life and sees him serving godliness, and that gives him a different level of perspective altogether. Now, I hope you are seeing appearing here that the light is one level of existence and darkness is another level of existence. And we're not talking about physical light, we're talking about a concept. We're talking about godliness. The light is good, kitov, which means physical. I'm disturbed by if it's the TV, I don't know, anyway, I'll try and leave them alone with it. But the light is the perspective of serving godliness, bringing godliness into your experience. You and I have an experience which includes taking for granted our body and taking for granted the ants and taking for granted the air and the sky and the weather. What about the weather? Mm-hmm. Just try to control the weather. I mean, the weather is an incredible set of forces and energies, and we're annoyed if it's raining and we get wet, and we're happy if it's sunny but not too hot. If it gets too hot, you got to have an air conditioner. But nobody stops to think about why the weather has to change like this and what spiritual advantages you have being exposed to these different weather systems. And the main point of this is that Hashem has created two realities. He's created, before we even start with the donkeys and the cars and the houses and the growth in the garden and the clothing you wear and all of that, before we start with any of that, Hashem starts with makes a statement in the Torah, and he says, I'm creating light and I'm creating darkness, and I'm asking you to do something with that light. Now, what is the something that we have to do with the light? So we learn, and we've learned together, in the Shir many times, that Hashem created the world in order to have a dira b'taktoinim, to have a dwelling place for him in Gashmias. In other words, Hashem created Gashmias, yesh ma'ayin, something out of nothing, which is an incredible thing to have done, or keep doing. All of these details that I've just referred to, 5 details, and there are billions in creation all the time. All those controlled details. Huh? Oh, yes. All of those controlled details. We are given I missed a step. The world comes from the word helem, which means hidden. So God is the same, and with Torah, a paradigm once established, it becomes a constant through everything in your life. The way you part your hair, that's the same thing over and over and over again. Hashem has created light, but he's hidden it away. He's saying, I'm making a world, but I'm hiding myself. With all the complexity of all of creation, you and I can't see God unless you need a psychiatrist. You and I don't. You see some of the evidences of God, but you don't see God. God is not revealed in an overt way, and so he's created this light himself, is shining, but he's put it away because you and I can't see it. And he says, you got a choice, guys. You can spend your life, like most people, in the dark, or you can come and get me. You can come and get me and make for me a place that I can reveal this light to you, which at the moment I'm not doing. I'm not doing that. The animals are not going to do that. The buildings aren't going to do that. Humanity's got to do that. Humanity in general, and Am Yisrael in particular. And there's nothing to boast about that. It's a responsibility. We're given extra koiches to do that. Like some people run faster than other people. Doesn't mean they're superior beings. They can run faster. Jews have a bigger spiritual consciousness than non-Jews do. Nothing to boast about. We have that spiritual consciousness for a reason. Hashem has created this light and put it away for a reason. What's the reason? That it be revealed. Who's going to reveal it? Am Yisrael and humanity in general. If that is revealed by humanity in general and Am Yisrael in particular, Hashem will then be able to be precipitated into obviousness. At the moment, you can't say that he's precipitated into obviousness. However, what you can say, and this is an amazing experiential thing, it's very difficult to explain until you suck it and see, try it. Let's not miss this step. How do we make that dira b'taktoinim? How? How do we access that light rather than the darkness? We learn Torah and do mitzvahs. We learn Torah, which gives us access to God's rotzen, to his will. And we do the mitzvahs, meaning we use Gashmias to fulfill Hashem's will, and that elevates that Gashmias. And slowly but surely, generation after generation, act after act, tefillin after tefillin, kashrus after kashrus, takris hamishpaka after takris hamishpaka, slowly but surely, we are adding bricks to the, or adding light. Let's each time we do a mitzvah, we add a little bit of that light that was taken and hidden away. And until ultimately, and this is the whole reason tzaddikim want Mashiach, they don't want Mashiach for a new Ferrari. They don't want Mashiach so that they have a better level of health and they can jog in the city to surf without having to stop. They want Mashiach because when Mashiach comes, we are told that is the moment that there will be this precipitation of godliness as a separate, tangible, obvious experience for us. Who wouldn't want that? That's what tzaddikim crave. And their language has to be a bit secretive as well, because there's a whole problem of taking away free choice from people. We can't go there yet, but one of the tools that Hashem uses for the hiddenness of that light is our free choice, where you have somebody who gets advice and ignores it. Has the free will to ignore it, and does. Just in the same way that, look, the Rebbe said to everybody in black and white at many, many Farbrengens, he said, listen, I get all these letters. I'm telling you, you want to have a better life. I'll give you a simple, say Chitas every day. You know what Chitas is? It's a portion of Torah. It's a portion of Tanya, and it's a portion of Tillim. Say Chitas every day. Does that make you a saint? It doesn't. No. But what is it like? It's like this is the moshel. There's a highway, 6 lanes on either side, and in the middle there's a median strip. If you walk on the highway, the odds are that sooner or later it's a numbers game. You're going to get run over. If you walk on the median strip, the chances are that you'll survive. The Rebbe says, you say Chitas, it doesn't mean you're going to not have your tests every day. You're going to have your tests every day. But you're walking on the medium strip. You're accessing the median strip rather than the highway. The real dynamic of your and my life comes from realizing that there is a purpose, and how you and I tune into that purpose is the variable for the level of satisfaction and nachas that you have in your life. Now, does that mean that's why we should do it? No, we should do it because it's Ratzon Hashem. We have a commandment to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. That's what Jews have to do. Each one to his own level. And you got to know yourself. You can't hoodwink. I think it was the Kotzker Rebbe, one of the Rebbes, not in Chabad, said, what's the big miler in a fool fooling a fool? If you want to fool yourself, then there's a fool fooling a fool. If you have the capacity to learn 10 minutes of Torah a day, don't try and learn 15, because it'll turn you off the 10. Build up to the 15 slowly, and then when you get to 15, take on 20. And after 20, 25, but not, you can't say I'm retiring and I'm going to learn Torah all day. You've got no chance. That doesn't mean that the pathway isn't the same pathway. The pathway is learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. But you've got to be able to. And that's a matter of training. That's a matter of living. That's a matter of life. And that's what it means in Parshat in Devarim, where it says that I'm putting before you today a choice of living or of life and death. And it says, choose life. Hashem says choose life. So the commentators say, well, what sort of a choice is that? What idiot wouldn't choose life? But they don't understand how to choose life. Choosing life means I'm going to make subservient my needs for gratification, and instead of serving myself for that gratification, I want to serve God. And serving God ultimately comes down to giving benefit to other people. And that's why Kedusha is consistent with helping other people, especially Jews helping other Jews. And Klippa is the withholding of that help. The Rebbe tells a story in one of the Fabrings, I can't remember which one, that when in the 40s, when the Frierdiker Rebbe first came to America, he was poor. I mean, there was no money for observant Jews, and this was after the war. And one Shabbos in Bensonhurst, this Yid goes to the bimmer and clops on the bimmer on Shabbos, and he says, I want the Olam to know that I have to ask Mechila, I have to ask forgiveness from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is the Frierdiker Rebbe. He said, the Frierdiker Rebbe is a real Rebbe, and I need to ask forgiveness. Why? Because he always used to poke fun at the Rebbe, this guy. He was a Frum Yid from Europe. He'd come to America, clean-shaven, modern Orthodox, and he laughed at the fact that the Rebbe came and kept his old clothes and said America isn't different and we have to be exactly the same here as we were in Europe. What's the difference where we are? And he used to laugh at this. So he got very sick, and he had a prosperous business. He got very sick, and in the sickness, he ended up using up all his financial resources, all the money. I don't know what it was, until he was broke, and he didn't know what to do. So, and there were then Yiddish newspapers in New York, there were many of them. But there was a paper called the Allgemeine Journal, and he put an ad in there in the Allgemeine Journal: Yid needs help. That was the ad. No one responded to the ad, except he got a call from the Frierdiker Rebbe's secretary, and he says, the Rebbe wants to know what help you need. So he explained that he's lost all his money and he needs a loan so that he can start his business again. How much was the loan? It's a considerable amount of money. Next day, this amount of money arrives from the Rebbe the Lubavitcher Rebbe with a note saying, this is difficult for me, I've borrowed it. I want your undertaking that you'll repay it at your earliest opportunity. And he took the money and he started the business started, and he got up on the bimmer and said, I want people to understand who the Lubavitcher Rebbe is. Now, that's a story about a Rebbe. But when you have a story about a Rebbe, you have to understand that the ingredients of that story apply to you and me. What was the Rebbe doing? He wasn't saving up the money for himself, that he have a better building, a newer car, better shoes, a better spodik. He was using the money to help somebody else. That's Kedusha. That's the light. You and I have... What the thrust of this sikha is that the whole purpose of our living is to make a dira b'tachtonim, is to make a dwelling place for Hashem, to precipitate Hashem's obviousness in creation, and we do that by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and we are revealing that hidden light. That's the whole code of this first statement. It looks so simple. Hashem saw that it said, let there be light, and there was light. That's the whole story. But the whole story is very complex. The whole story is that Hashem is starting with the cake, seeing the chocolate cake. What's the chocolate cake? Diribatak. He is seeing that the end of this game is for him to be obvious in nature. But he doesn't want to be obvious in nature by his doing. He wants to create humanity with free choice, dealing with evil, which we probably won't get time for tonight, and in doing so, to live his life in accordance with Ratzon Hashem, learning his wisdom and keeping his mitzvahs. Now, that's a whole different perspective to getting up in the morning and spending the day on automatic, so that your day is spent seeking gratification as automatically as it is digesting your food. It's criminal. You're wasting your life. I'm wasting my life. So now let me deal with the difficult part of this. The fact is that you and I are going to be, each one of us, served up with a whole lot of things we don't like. Every day. I want to tell you something. I went to a funeral today. My brother-in-law, he died a couple of days ago. We went to Rookwood. It's now fashionable to have the whole service at Rookwood. We had the whole service at Rookwood outside, standing up in the sun. And when it was time to go, we went to my car, and we had the whole family here because it was my wife's sister's husband. And I go to my car, and I have this expensive 500 Lexus, 500 something, I don't know what, I'm not big on cars, but that thing doesn't start. So they think it's the jumper leads, and my sons-in-law organised jumper, and we're there for half an hour, and no jumper leads, that doesn't work. I've left the car there. My son-in-law is organised for a tow truck. It's going to go to Lexus. It's got to get fixed. When it gets fixed, I've got to pick it up from Lexus, pay for it, for all of this. Who wants this? You don't want that. You don't want that in your day, especially when you're doing a mitzvah of going to a levaya. If you're going to a mitzvah to a levaya, you want God to help you, and you got to live through all of this, right? Now, all of us have this stuff happening to us all day, every day. I'm not any more special than you or anybody else. But the problem is, let's understand this. What is your attitude? What's my attitude to this? Is my attitude to this that, this has gone wrong. I'm a victim. This isn't part of my self-gratification. This isn't part. Why is God doing this to me? Right? Why? What do I need this for? I came here to do a mitzvah, and now I've got this bloody thing with the car and the money and the bother and the tow truck and thank God I had my sons-in-law to organise all of this, because I don't know how to do this stuff. So I'd have got an Uber home and then pay double what it's going to. Anyway, so you can have the perspective that you're a victim. Now, I want to give you another perspective. What if your perspective is genuinely, and this takes a lot of work, I'm not suggesting it's instant, but what if your perspective is that for some reason you have been sent this test? You don't know why, you don't know what for, you don't know what came before, you don't know what's coming afterwards, I don't know who's watching, I don't know who's learning. This is your nisoyan for the next quarter of an hour, whatever it is. Are you a victim, or are you a shliach of Hashem to deal with that nisoyan and turn the darkness of that nisoyan into light? Do you understand the difference? One is an empowerment, and then the trivia that happens, and then I go to the thing tonight, and some poor man there, I think, had a heart attack and fell over, and they called Hatzalah, and there were 5 doctors in the room, and and the poor guy was lying on the floor and he vomited and you know, it's very hard not to think Gamza Latoiva. I want to help the guy, but you suddenly think, how trivial is my stupid car, the Lexus, to what he's going through. And I'm not saying that wasn't a test, because I don't know what the solution to that is. We've all got to try. We don't know why God's doing things but you do know one thing. You know whether your perspective is that you are the object of happenstance, or whether you're a soldier doing a specific task. And if you do the specific task properly and you have fulfilled your shlichus, the fact that you've done it is its own reward. You feel good. Feel great. I'm not saying that I feel great about my Lexus, by the way. I'm just trying to use the example because I had a guy who used to come to the Shia for years. He was South African, and he undertook to be kosher. And I warned him, you know, it's a big commitment. Maybe you should start with just kosher meat, or no, I want kosher. So he had to go to America, South America it was. And so he proudly filled in his form that he wanted kosher food on the plane. And he got on the plane, and it's a 16-hour flight, and they didn't have kosher food for him. Something got mixed up.
Yeah.
So he came to me and he was telling me what happened. I mean, you've got to understand, this Jew is a hero. He's explaining to me that the thought of going 16 hours without any food, you know, he was devastated. So he decided, look, this was outside of my control. I'll start with my resolution to be kosher next week. God did this to me. It's not. I haven't been kosher all my life, so I've been not kosher for another week. And then he thought, but I made a promise to myself to be kosher. And then he said, I made a promise to God to be kosher. So the guy didn't eat anything on that plane trip. Now that man lives a different life after that. When he talks to his God after that, he's already got a pedigree to talk to his God. He's earned it. He's got something. So you can live your life at two planes. This is what this sikha is about. Running out of time, of course. Just a minute, let me just see what I've left out. Okay. I've left out some details, but essentially this is what the sikha is about, that there are these two planes. That there is light which is supposed to be revealed but is hidden. There is the fact that it's hidden, and that is also purposeful to enable you and I to have the glory of working with the gashmis that you and I have to endure every day, to elevate it, to make the missing food part of your achievement. Make that the dark. You have to admit that if there's no food on a 16-hour flight for this guy, that was darkness for him. That was bad. He thought that was really bad luck, right? No such thing as luck.
Yeah.
So, and then he was able to convert that into an opportunity for doing Ratzon Hashem, notwithstanding the fact that it was difficult for him, and he grew enormously from that. And that's the paradigm, that there is darkness and there is light. Our job is to bring that cake that Hashem visualizes initially into fruition. How do we do that? By living thousands of years in Golos, of dealing with our nisyonis, dealing with our tests, each one different, each one has different tests, each one has different capacity to deal with those tests. Each one has his own private scorecard. Your tests are not my tests are not your tests. If and it's very difficult for some people. They have, I'll tell you a sad secret of Torah. It's explained in the Zohar that if a person has very few tests, right, he's beautiful, he's married to a beautiful woman, they have plenty of money, they have children, nakas from their children, they have very few problems, they're happy, he's popular. This man has a tiny neshama. Why? Because he can't stand the nisyonis. So Hashem gives him a life that he can manage. But it's a small soul. And then you get the poor guy who can't make any money, who's ugly, who's sick, who's got sores on his body, his wife's left him, he doesn't have any. This man has a massive neshama. Massive. Why? Because if Hashem was giving him these tests and he didn't have a neshama big enough to deal with them, Hashem's the saddest. There's no other logic, right?
But in relation to the neshama itself, what does it actually matter? If you are actually in the same place where the neshama is actually in the holiest place, because it doesn't matter if the neshama is small or large, it still comes from the same source.
Good question. Just let me finish this and then we come back to that question. So the game is, you can spend your whole life in darkness, and that's an acceptable level of creation. Hashem created the world where he is not obvious. But if you really want to live, and you really want to live a full and purposeful life, realizing your potential, then you have to begin to learn to understand the perspective that every time you get a test, you are being empowered to deal with that test. It's not something to mourn, it's not something to cry over, it's not something to sigh over, it's something to take on as your personal challenge. Now, how do you know what your challenges are? Easy. Whatever's happening to you, that's your challenge. It's not mine. None of you had the challenge of my car today. That's my challenge. But if it's my challenge, the game is to understand that somehow or other I have to work with that and make light come out of that darkness. Will I find it? I don't know. Give me a broker that I'll find it. But I'm just trying to explain that. So why did Hashem create the light first before the creation? And the Rebbe goes through a whole thing that, the whole point of light is that there should be a Giloi, and if there was to be a Giloi, there should have been creatures to receive that Giloi. So why did he create it first? So that there's no creatures to receive the Giloi, because the light has to be accessed by us, by humanity, to make a Dira B'Taktoinim. And then we have, when we have the Dira B'Taktoinim, that comes with the precipitation of Mashiach, and let's hope we get it. Now, let's go to your question. We learn that a neshama is a helik Eloika mimal. It's a part of God himself. This is a very difficult thing if you want to argue it, because we can spend a couple of hours on how can you have a part of infinity. Right? How can you have a part of infinity? But that's the language. And I promise you that is solvable, that problem. But let's keep the problem simple at the moment. That every neshama is a helik Eloika. But that helik, that part, can be big or small. That part can be powerful or weaker. Hashem is going to invest that part in gufim, in bodies. Some bigger, his presence is more greater. I mean, we're using physical adjectives to explain a spiritual thing, but there can be a greater energy in somebody and a lower energy. Paradoxically, it manifests itself the opposite way around. You think, here's this beggar, I don't have to give him the time of day, he's a moron, he's grubby, he's filthy, he's dirty, he's got terrible table manners, he's stupid, he doesn't understand this and that. And the whole of the British Empire was built on the snobbery of these people.
Yeah.
What they don't understand is that guy's got a bigger neshama than the snob has. And why? Because he can deal with his nesuinus, whereas the person who's kicking him around can't. So he's got a smaller neshama, and he thinks he's very important. That's the tragedy of it.
I'm actually confused in relation to the.
Anyway, I'll stop this because let me just stop it. Yeah. So sorry.
Not to the ratio of